Hello, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Deidre Reigel Hope and Healing Radio Show. This is no ordinary podcast. This production has heart and soul, healing and wisdom, artists and authors. Deidre has spent her entire life promoting people, projects, and products that further hope and healing. She has also been a positive force in the entertainment industry as a vocalist, performer, musician, composer, conductor, author, and healer. You will be in good hands spending this time with her and her guests as they will guide you into another space where you can relax and feel their positive energy. Thank you for joining us. And now, here is the amazing Deidre Reigel with her special guest.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to part 2 of How to Keep Your Sanity in Times of Chaos. This is a series that I think we so very, very, very much all of us need at these times in our lives and in our planet. Today's guest is Rick Lineback. And before I engage Rick in conversation, let me just give you a very brief background on him. I'll start by saying he is actually also a guest on as part 2 of my series on artists, because part of his life has involved art. But let me give you some background. He's originally from Florida, migrated to California, is a member of the Self-Realization Fellowship. His life went from corporate America to a current life of service and joy. Along the way, he discovered songwriting and piano playing. He has released an original song with a beautiful video attached to it called Your Hiding Place. In fact, so powerful is that song, I should say, that it caused me to reach out to him on Facebook and invite him to be a guest on my podcast show. And I had never met the man before. And so that's how powerful the arts are and how powerful this particular song was and is. This past Friday, August the 30th, he was in the studio with yet another new song. He is reachable on Facebook. That's Rick Lineback, Lineback. So it is a delight to have Rick here today. Rick, welcome to this series. How are you today?
Oh, thank you, Deidre. I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for that really wonderful introduction.
You're so welcome. It's all true. It's absolutely all true. So I'm hoping you'll share a little bit of your story with us, although I know that you want to talk about philosophy and what is our real purpose being here, and talk about wisdom. And I think that's so needed in these times that we're living in. And so I want to start with the first. What is your definition of sanity?
Well, I went to the dictionary just to get their take on it, and the dictionary says that sanity is the state of having good judgment, or that's not the exact words, but sound judgment. But for me, someone who's been practicing yoga for 45 years plus, that is not, for me, an adequate definition. I don't think for anyone really. I would like to suggest that sanity is the ability to be in the world but not of it, which this obviously brings up the subject of spirituality. It's really about our state of consciousness, and that in turn is going to be sort of the theme today for me, is that we have to ask, why are we here, and what is our purpose? And that's some of the things that I'd like to talk about. But the definition of sanity probably has a very broad reach. It could be something as simple as seeming to exercise sound judgment, all the way to having very spiritual understanding of life. So that's a big, wide, I can't come up with the right word, but a stretch.
Well, it would seem for us to be able to exercise sound judgment that we would have to have done a lot of internal work on our own mental and spiritual workings on the inside. To exercise sound judgment in our external life. So, in other words, what we think is who we are. And so it seems to me that this is, as everyone's saying these days, it's an inside job. So I love your definition as the ability to be in the world but not of it, and to be in a state of consciousness, conscious awareness of ourselves. And we've all heard the definition of insanity, and that's to keep repeating the same action and hoping for a different result. And, Of course, we know that often doesn't work. So it seems to me that something different is needed, that very much we need to be doing our internal work and changing our minding, changing our thinking. So I love that definition that you've given to be in the world and not part of it. So, Rick, if I may move to the big question of the day, all of us, in my world, I have to specify here, everyone in my world is saying things are so different. Nothing is the way it used to be. It feels chaotic. Feels in turmoil. It feels chaotic, as I say. It feels like we're standing on shaky ground. The news is bad. People are protesting. The weather is bad. Everything is changing. And I think so many of us are feeling the effects of uncertainty and, of course, anxiety. So how do you personally, on a daily basis, navigate life? And as you share that, what helpful suggestions do you have for our listeners who may be feeling the same thing that I'm talking about?
Well, it's on my mind too, as it is, I believe, everybody in my personal sphere. And every time I look at the news, it seems to confirm that, we're in very chaotic times. I would say that first of all, this is not new. I think it's important to think in more vast terms. We've had nuclear bomb, the possibility of destruction of the world through nuclear bombs is as recently as in the 1960s or during the time of John F. Kennedy. And before that, too, we've had, but I think there's one difference, and that is that climate change does seem to be imminently threatening almost our very existence of our species. And it feels that way to a lot of people. This adds an extra stress to what otherwise I think we were leading up to this point. So I really do think we are in a different time now that's perhaps different from ever in the history of humanity. So I'm going to approach this and answer your question from more of a philosophical point of view and going back to why we're here. Yogananda, I'm going to quote Paramahansa Yogananda in one of my favorite quotes. He says, "We must learn to stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds." And in another quote, also one of my favorites, he says, "The universe is designed to frustrate you unless you are anchored in the divine." And these are really gigantic hints that we are all facing this battle. You might call it the battle between sanity and insanity if you wanted to. That may be stretching it a bit. But really what I'm talking about is this battle between the ego desires and between the soul and the soul wanting to follow in the will of God or follow in the path of some kind of awareness of God and consciousness. So you can boil it down to the definition of the purpose of life, which Yogananda did, that our sole and only purpose of being here on this earth plane is to seek God and find God and to know His love and to love God and to eventually merge our soul with the infinite, blissful God presence. People can call it by different names, and religions have different cultures and ways of expressing their concept of God and the way they worship God and so forth. But in the end, it all ends up to be the same. And I'm sort of just quoting Yogananda when I say that the pathway eventually leads to meditation and to service. He said once that life is chiefly service. And meditation is the way because our minds have become so attached and engrossed in the things of the world. And we've been doing this for many lifetimes. Of course, this presupposes that one accepts reincarnation, which I do. And I think it's really important. I think it's one of the most important doctrines to understand. You can almost go insane trying to figure out things if one doesn't have a pretty clear understanding that this is not our only time on earth. Most of us have spent literally thousands of lifetimes here, and or somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hear you.
So, I mean, I could go on and on about this, but I think to sort of narrow it down to one overall thing that I would suggest that people can do is, however they perceive God, is to try to develop that relationship deeper and deeper. And one of the most direct ways, which all the great religions teach, is just getting on your knees and pouring your heart out to God every day, maybe early in the morning or late at night, whenever. I practice this, and I tell you, it really works. And once you begin to raise the anytime you do that, you're raising the consciousness. First of all, wisdom teaches, in my opinion, us that keep in mind the purpose of why we're here. We're here to know God. We're not here to have yachts and become great rulers and do all these great things. All those things exist, and I'm not necessarily saying that they don't have their place. But in the end, our real purpose is to find God. And it's a lot more than just going to church on Sunday, And I'm not also putting that down. That's a wonderful thing to do. But it's every day, every hour, and even every minute. As St. Paul has said, pray unceasingly. So it really gets to be a lifestyle. And if we can gradually work on making that lifestyle more pointed towards God, more reminding ourselves that why are we here? Oh, I'm here because of you. You created me. I want to know you. I want to love you. I want to go deeper. I want to see everything from your eye. And so, again, I think I was meditating this morning and thinking about our interview. And I thought, wow, my songs, which I've written about 8 songs, I've been a late bloomer in life, but all of them, nearly all of them, except for one secular song, are all about seeing God in everything. This universal concept that God is there everywhere. He's in every particle of creation. And this is actually the real truth that we're all trying to understand and wake up to. And it doesn't just happen overnight. It's really a life's work. In fact, perhaps many lifetimes of work. But when we think in those kind of thoughts that we have time, God is not punishing us. He's waiting for us. He loves us so much. She. I don't want to be sexist here.
Thank you.
I recognize I'm a writer, so I realize what
I understand, Rick. Yes.
But he, she, our Creator, our Father, Mother, friend, our beloved, is waiting patiently, infinite patience for us to return. But more than that, I really believe, from what I understand of the process, he's also drawing us in, pulling us in. Divine Mother, pulling us in with her love, her divine love, which is 1,000,000 times more than the love of a mother for her child, which is tremendous love. But Divine Mother's love is something that once we begin to get pulled in by that web, they call it a web that you can't escape from, and it's a good web. You can't go back. Once you know enough about how it all works, you can't go back. You can't go back to just sort of flittering one's life away with desires, satisfying all the millions and millions of desires. And that kind of brings me to the different philosophies, like Buddhism proclaims, rightly so, that desire and attachment are the 2 big enemies, and so Buddhism emphasizes this state of non-attachment, and so do all the other religions, really, in one way or another. And so that's it. From my perspective, it's when you really focus on why we're here, and then you try to guide your life according to this deep understanding that you come to deeper and deeper as you practice different techniques. Yoga, I want to dispel a myth about yoga. In the Western world, you oftentimes see people talking about yoga as being stretching and so forth, which it is, hatha yoga. And it's like a great way to relax and to tune in and to overcome stress and all that. But all that being true, the real purpose of yoga is, the word itself is the yoking. I think the Sanskrit root means yoking, the yoking of our individual soul with God, with the Supreme Being. And all the other exercises in yoga, all the way from breathing exercises and pranayama exercises and hatha yoga stretching and posture and then later on meditation, all of those only have one purpose, and that is ultimately our self-realization or union with God. And so I run into a lot of people who emphasize yoga but don't really, hatha yoga and things like that, but don't get it or make the connection that the only reason yogis practice yoga really is to enable them to have to prepare the body for the higher consciousness and other states of higher meditation and ultimately oneness with God, with the infinite. So, it's just very philosophical, and I'm almost a little embarrassed to get this deep into the philosophy. But I think it is the thing that drives everything and should be. And when we think thoughts, vast thoughts like this, it becomes easier to relax and to let go of the little things, the little stuff. What is that famous saying? Everything is, you'll have to help me out here, Deidre. Everything is little stuff. I can't remember what it is. But,
all I can think of at the moment, Rick, is Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, which is the title of a wonderful book. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it. I couldn't think of it. Thank you. And, don't sweat the small stuff, and everything is small stuff. And it is really true. I mean, we're all in regular consciousness. We're just dealing with all these issues, which we have to deal with. But if we include and inject this awareness that everything, the real purpose behind all of this, everything we do, every breath we take, every thought we have, is really a journey of getting closer to our divine, beloved Father, Mother.
I'm almost speechless. We know these things all of our lives, and to have this kind of conversation with you, to hear you so beautifully and articulately speak these truths from your own language and your own life is very, very, very powerful and awakens in me, Rick, memories of my own spiritual and philosophical development in my life. And, of course, I'm imagining it will be doing the same thing for our listeners, each receiving this information in their own way. And you've said some things that I'd like to just backtrack on. I've taken note. I'd like to reiterate. Okay. The word perspective really stands out. And what I know what I'm hearing you say is when we are constantly seeking the minute-to-minute, nanosecond to nanosecond presence of God, or whatever we would like to use in the place of the word God, depending on whatever our belief system is. We are elevating ourselves above what we would call maybe the mundane, the daily stresses of life, and we're pulling ourselves up to a much higher perspective where we can see almost from the eagle's eye, that perspective. And so the things that we think are so important, which indeed are, but may have been blown out of proportion, that are causing anxiety and stress, fall into place, and we can see that in the larger picture, these quote-unquote vicissitudes or difficulties are actually serving the larger purpose of nudging our soul into seeking God and seeking to merge with that blissful presence, masculine, feminine, whatever we wish to call it, that these things are actually designed to help us, to the universe. If the universe is going to frustrate us, as Yogananda says, then we must be anchored in the divine, and we look at everything is working to our good. In the quote-unquote Christian Bible, I would quote Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to them that are called according to God's purpose. And so you're saying the same thing in your language, and it is so interesting and so inspiring, as all of my guests have been so far in this series, to hear you speak about the lifestyle. This I wrote down, the lifestyle of wisdom and connection to God and that perspective. And I think you have eloquently talked about developing that minute-to-minute relationship with God that changes the fear. I think it takes the fear out of our life. I think so many of us are driven by fear. What if this bad thing happens? What if that bad thing happens? What will I do? Eventually, these bodies we live in are probably going to perish, and so, we know that. In the meantime, what is the quality of our life? Are we in that blissful state of the presence of God minute to minute? The truth is that many of us aren't, because we're dealing with, as I say, the vicissitudes and stresses of life minute to minute. You bring a fresh perspective, Rick, with what you're saying about the practice of the presence of God on a minute-to-minute basis. Did I take good notes, and did I get it right, Rick?
You sure did. Thank you. I think you articulated it better than me.
Yours is as special as anybody else's, Rick. So special what you're saying. And I think this is the foundation of our sanity. Is that where you're coming from? This is our sanity, is to be in the presence of God at all times.
Yeah. I don't even think there is any other way. That's the mysticism or the magic behind it, or maybe I should put it, the solution to the enigma of life is that there really isn't any other way but to find a way to put God first. No matter what we're doing, doesn't excuse us from doing our jobs well. In fact, what it does is it allows us to do our jobs much better and to be much more efficient. And this is really the secret. And
I know we're running out of time, and I'm going to ask you to be a guest on the show again, and in fact in this series, because I think you have so much more to say. But let me ask you to repeat what you just said about being efficient. Would you mind saying that again, please?
Well, I hope I can remember. If the only way that we can really get in tune is understand through wisdom that we have to put God first as we're doing our duties. And our duties it's not a distraction to be putting this. God is not something, thinking of God and practicing the presence is not a distraction, but it becomes a holistic way of including him, her, in everything we do. And there are many techniques to do that, and it can become very personal, but you become more efficient. You become better at what you do. And it's probably this, all people who accomplish great things, either consciously or unconsciously, are doing this. And that's how universal it is. And that's the great news, I think, for our world. It's not just, one religion and one sect and this and that, or one belief or one philosophy. It's God. Yogananda referred to his particular path, this path of SRF, is the church of all religions, because he emphasized how it's all inclusive. And that's kind of what I'm trying to emphasize. We each find our own personal relationship with God. There are concepts which are common, I think, to all of them. And that's the other great, wonderful thing, is that we really are all one. It's just expressed in different ways. We're all unique, and yet we're all one. It's kind of a paradox, isn't it? But
yes, it is. But that's, again, the value of diversity. And, it's like a tapestry. We all bring our own personal colors to this very large picture. Again, I really hear you about how it's so personal and yet it's so universal. And, again, putting God in everything, yes, we become more efficient. Life becomes better. And this is a fabulous way of looking at life. Rick, I know we've come to the end of our time. Again, I'm going to ask you to be a guest again on this series as part of this, How to Keep Your Sanity in Times of Chaos, because I think you have something so wonderful to say, and I think you have more in you yet to share with us. And so we take this, all of us, one step at a time. We absorb as much information as we can from 1 minute to the next and build on that. So, Rick, I thank you for taking time from your schedule once again to be part of my podcast, and would like to remind our listeners that Rick is reachable on Facebook. It's Rick Lineback, Lineback. Please look him up on Facebook. Please listen to his music called Your Hiding Place. He has new music coming out soon. And just give yourself the gift of, ladies and gentlemen, being in touch and paying attention to what Rick has to say and what Rick has to offer. So with that, Rick, I'm going to bid you a good afternoon in California and invite our listeners to share this video with this podcast with as many friends as possible, and spread the gospel, spread the good news that we can live victorious, successful, and blissful lives. And Rick, I thank you for sharing yourself and your wisdom, your hard-earned wisdom with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deidre. Thanks for having me.
The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of this podcast, nor is any content intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness of any kind, or substitute for proper professional care in this regard. We sincerely hope you have enjoyed today's show. If you're not already a subscriber, please click on the link and join our ever-growing community of goodwill. If you would like to be a guest on our show, please contact us at drhoperadio@gmail.com. That's drhoperadio@gmail.com. All of us here at the Deidre Reigel Hope and Healing Radio Show wish you a day filled with hope and joy. Till next time, namaste.